What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more video game music, and we're going to listen to a remix of a track from one of my favorite games, Star Control 2. And in that game, there is a species known as the Dynarri, which you eventually find out used to be this brutal, galactically dominating species that uses their mental psionic powers to subvert other species to their will. Eventually, the antagonistic species of the game in the current time, the Urquan, eventually they overthrew their overlords, the Dynarri, and then subjected them to genetic engineering such that they made them non-sentient and make the Dynarri serve their will in future generations. But the point is, the Dynarri are a species used by the Urquan for translation, and over the course of the game, you eventually encounter a Dynarri that has been reverse bioengineered to restore it to a sentient state, and it's a bit malicious. It's trying to subvert other species in the current time in order to get its revenge against the Urquan for destroying their species that, again, used to dominate the galaxy. Now you, the captain of the game, eventually are able to protect yourself from the sentient Dynarri and use it as a tool to defeat the Urquan for your own purposes. And when you meet this Dynarri, it plays this music. It's a bit slow and down-tempo, but it has an edge and a darkness to it. Well, in 2006, I want to say, at least more generally the mid-2000s, about 15 or so years or more after the game originally came out, which was 1992, a group of, I think, primarily Scandinavian artists, and I think even more specifically, a bunch of Finnish producers who I think worked in electronic genres, they were so fond of the game they made a remix album and they named themselves the Precursors, which is this legendary ancient species in the game that you're trying to find out about and see where they went, and you learn that they were very advanced and they were able to engineer entire planets and so on. And so the Precursors did a bunch of remixes of tracks from the game. Now fast forward even more, eventually an open source code version of the game was released called the Urquan Masters, and you can download it for your computer. I did a playthrough of it on my YouTube here. And when you set up the Urquan Masters game on your computer, you can choose to play it with the original music from the 92 game, or you can actually have it play the Precursor remixes, each one replacing an older version or an older or original tune from the original soundtrack. Now, I typically play it with the old music because that's the way I know it, that's the way I played it, but the remixes are great. And among those remixes, maybe my favorite one is the remix for the Dynarri track, which is called Talking Pet, because that's the de-engineered Dynarri who have been made non-sentient. They're referred to as talking pets because they serve as translators, but they don't really, have the sentience to do anything that they did when they used to dominate the galaxy. It's called Talking Pet, Didn't You Mean to Ask About Flowers? And the reason it's called that is because when you encounter this one sentient Dynarri, if you don't have the protection, it eventually makes you start talking about flowers, and suddenly you wake up in the middle of nowhere in space with an Urquan about to kill you. So the idea is that, when you talk to them, you have to be careful, otherwise they get you talking about flowers and you end up going toward your own death unwillingly because they've mentally controlled you. So it's making reference to the characters of the Dynarri and this one specifically in the game, but it's this really floaty, Sibient, spacefaring kind of tune, which is a different atmosphere than the original Dynarri track gives you. So a lot of the remixes the Precursors did are very close to the original track in terms of the feel and the atmosphere. This one really sort of takes it in a different direction, and I like it all the more for that. So let's give it a listen. This is the remix by the Precursors of the Dynarri track from the original Star Control 2 game, and it's given the name Talking Pet, Didn't You Mean to Ask About Flowers? that flared, like overexposed quality to that layer. Well, if that's what it feels like to be brainwashed by a secretly sentient frog-like species, count me in. Honestly, I just love the Sybient feel to it, very much this floating galactic ambient. I especially like that extra melodic layer. It's almost like a synth horn, very subtle, that comes in the last couple measures where it's like this rising motif. But the float of that main bubbly, it's not even so much a melody, it's like a melody percussive synthesis, but that constant bubbling sonic detail in the middle of the track carries it. Obviously, there's a steady kick drum in some places, a snare drum that has some pop to it, and it's just this lovely floating, looking out the windshield or the window of a spaceship type of song, or track, I should say. There's no actual singing in there, is there? Which begs the question, if there's no singing in a track, can it possibly be called a song? Surely it's a piece, it's a track, but maybe not a song. Anyway, these are arcane semantic discussions. I will just say that I think it's the best of the Precursor remixes, and they're all great. Though, as I said, also, when I play the game, and as people who went through the playthrough with me on YouTube here for Star Control 2 will know, I like the original music because I think it is also fantastic, even though it came much earlier, like a decade and a half earlier, and also because it's just so fitting, all the different pieces, the hyperspace piece, the planet exploration pieces, there's a suite of like 5 of them, and that, again, of the original soundtrack, those 5 planet exploration suites might be my favorite, but either way, the Precursor remixes are fantastic as well, so shout out to the Precursors, shout out to folks who are into Star Control 2, let me know what you think of this, and I will see you next time. Peace.